Welcome to the Aliveness Habit, refreshing conversations with everyday masters of aliveness. This conversation series has been designed just to have an exploration of this beautiful experience of aliveness and what it means for each one of us and how we cultivate our own aliveness in our everyday lives. And so I'm delighted today to have a beautiful guest on with me. And as I should say, as I go through life, I connect with people, I meet people, and I get inspired by them. And so there's no big rhyme or reason here. I just invite people to come on and chat and share their beautiful wisdom and their nuggets with the world. And so Alex Garcia, I gotta actually, your name is Granato-Garcia,
Yes.
is with us today, and I'm so delighted to have you here. Alex, first of all, shares my name, Alex, so that's a good sign. But Alex is also an indigenous somatic practitioner, and she offers a very beautiful, holistic approach that helps people connect to their bodies, to their emotions, to the world around them through somatic practices. And I can't wait to have this chat with you today around what that looks like. And I know also that you use nature
Yes.
and the creative arts in order to facilitate this healing experience and this transformation, and that your connection to joy and wonder is really, really textured and rich, and I can't wait to get into that today. So Alex, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Alex. I am so thrilled to be here. Greetings and gratitudes to all of you. I'm coming to you here from the ancestral homelands of the Coahuiltecan and the Estogana tribal nations. Where I live was actually known as the Yanawana, or the land of the spirit waters, and that is San Antonio, Texas. And I love to use a land acknowledgement in my practice. It helps to just anchor and ground into the space and to really invite that outer connectedness to our inner lives.
I love that. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. And on that note, I would love to ask the question, what does aliveness mean to you? And how has that experience of aliveness evolved for you over time?
Yeah, so I love that question. And for aliveness for me is really being connected to your own essence and really understanding what is mine to weave into this world. And I feel like this has been a question that I've asked myself ever since I was a child. And when I think about the experience of how this has been led in my life, I realize how one big of a role wonderment played into that. And the countless hours I spent out in nature, just looking at the smallest of details that most people would probably pass by, and really think about the reason for those details and the beauty and the wonder, and how does that then connect to something else. And I've always been a systems style of thinker, and it's really beautiful in how just that pure wonderment, when you think about a child, right, you realize like that is the way in which we learn. We don't have our words yet a lot of times. And what somatics really is actually our lived experience. And so when you begin to really think about that, you begin to understand how these different experiences have shaped who you are.
Mm. Oh man, I love that. I hear so many things, the interconnection and the wonderment essence. Uh, so I'm curious, when you say somatic, I know that a lot of people are like, what the heck is somatic? What does that mean? I get that a lot in my own practice. And so
Yes.
I wonder if you could just offer a really quick summary that people are going to understand around what does it mean to be in somatic connection.
Yeah, I love that. And this has been something I've been really practicing answering over the last year. And for me, I will say somatics to me is an art form. It's this living, breathing experience that is always happening within us. So when we look at the word somatics, the root word is soma, meaning body, body as experienced. When we think about as experienced, well, what does that mean? We're talking about the felt sense, right? And when you think about your life, there are these felt senses that are happening all the time, whether we're consciously or unconsciously aware of them. And so what somatics really is this discovery into those felt experiences and seeing what is lying within the body when it comes to that felt experience. So the feelings and the emotions, and what does that all mean?
Hmm. And so, and then you use nature as a way,
Mhm.
as a way in. Can you share more about that? Because
Yes.
I love nature as a gateway to feeling alive and as a gateway into your felt
Yes.
experiences in your body.
Yes, so nature has just been a huge part of my life. I grew up on the Texas-Mexico border, and we were just outside all the time as kids and just growing up. And so nature's always been a big part for me. And as I've discovered more and more about my indigenous roots, I really began to understand epigenetically why, and so that's a really beautiful thing too. But I really have this sense of reverence for nature. And I love to use nature as the muse, as that gateway to create safety in the body, to allow people to begin to see themselves as nature, because we all are. And the other reason why I love to use nature is because it's free. And all we have to do is to step outside or to travel a few miles, and we can just experience such diversity in nature depending on where we go. And
Hmm.
so, as if we look at nature and if we think about, my studies were in communication and I really emphasized on interpersonal and cultural communication. I've always loved experiencing and learning about other cultures. And so I've studied a lot of cultures and a lot of the sacred sciences, and also, a lot of what we know today now in the Western world too. And when you look at these ways of life and these ways of living, what information did they have at their fingertips to rely on? It was the world around them, it was nature. And so I think in our fast paced life, we get disconnected from that because we get programmed that we've got to do these certain things by these certain times in our life. And we kind of disconnect from that innate consciousness, that wisdom all around us in nature that can offer us those lessons, that can offer us those teachings, and we can begin to see ourselves again in that way. Because, as you know, our external experience is a reflection of what's happening internally.
Hmm. Yeah. And so for somebody who is sort of new to this and is listening and might be like, okay, so what am I looking for when I'm out in nature? Like, what am I doing? What am I actually like? How do you source aliveness in nature? Is it just a matter of being present to what's the small the small moments that we often overlook?
Mhm.
How do you start to source that aliveness when you're in nature?
I love that. So I begin every session. I facilitate outdoors whenever I can. So that's a really big part of my practice. And but sometimes, weather conditions, other conditions, that's not possible. And that's okay too. But what I start every session off with is walking.
Mm.
I have people walk the space, whatever space they're in. And when you begin to consciously walk with nature, you begin to open up this beautiful awareness. And I always tell people, like, this is how you can begin. Take a step outside, stand there with your feet about shoulder width apart, take a nice deep breath in and exhale, and allow yourself to just be in this moment now. And just notice, what is the first thing that comes to your awareness? What is that first feeling that you have? And where do you feel it in the body? And what is it? And so it could be a noise, it could be a sensation or a feeling. Sometimes maybe it's windy and you feel a brush of air across you. And so it's just kind of noticing and then tapping into the curiosity of, I was aware to this bird. I hear a lot of birds right outside my door. I always have blue jays or cardinals. And so it's like, okay, the blue jay's here today. And so then you can kind of begin. I do a lot of my work in archetypes. So as we open up this awareness, we begin to see certain patterns and we can look at other archetypes, synchronicities, things that have maybe always felt resonant for us, but maybe we've never stopped to wonder why. Like, what does that thing I really love have to teach me? Or what is it showing me? Why am I inspired by that? Or why do I feel connected? And so we get a little curious through the felt sense, and that's how we begin our exploration.
I love that. So how do you know when you're alive? What tells you you're alive?
So my aliveness, I really feel it in my heart space. My heart space feels expansive. And
Mm.
I can really feel when my heart feels open and alive. It's like my shoulders relax. I feel expanded. Whereas other times when I'm not feeling so alive, I begin to feel that contraction. And sometimes it doesn't start in my shoulders, it'll happen kind of in my ribs or maybe even in my hips and work its way up. So for me, I can really feel it in my heart and I really feel it in my sacral chakra. So right below the belly button. I'll feel lit up literally of like, oh my God, I feel so alive, like creative, generative, like something's moving, something's wanting to come through. So those two spaces is where I feel it the most.
Hmm. And what's important about that for you? Like, why does it, what's important about being in that space, that expansive space for you?
Well, for me, expansiveness is one of my guiding light feelings. Um, my three guiding light feelings are joy. So I always look for the joy in everything, even the unpleasant things. And expansiveness is one of my other guiding light feelings because I know when I feel expansive, I am in alignment. And my out of alignment is frustration. So I know if I'm feeling frustration, that I just need to take a pause. And I don't even have to spend a lot of time in the mind of like trying to logically figure it out, but I really tap into the body. Okay, I'm feeling frustrated. Where is that happening? And if I can hold the frustration and I can find that joy and expansiveness in my heart or in that sacral area and hold frustration at the same time, I begin to create that shift in the body.
Mm.
And that frustration lessens, that contraction begins to release and to soften. And then I'll begin to feel that expansiveness again. And so I know for me, when I am in that joy and in that expansion, is when I am being my best self. And, that's not all the time. That's not every day because we're human. But being able to honor, I think, where you're at and how you feel without just trying to stuff it down or to jump to the next thing is really a powerful practice in building your capacity, but also building your trust. Because
Mm.
before you can trust anybody else, you really have to trust yourself.
Yeah, agreed. And that trust is really this creating this sense of safety. I'm getting this feeling from you as you speak that all of this just builds this bigger holding pen of
Yes.
safety from the inside out. So
Mhm.
you're able to move through life just with more spaciousness and
Mm-hmm.
sense of safety. And I think that a lot of times we feel like, we have to find safety from the outside world, and
Yes.
a little bit lost in that, uh,
Mhm.
and lost in that quest,
Yes.
when safety is really cultivated from the inside. And I think that this process that you're sharing is such a powerful way to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. And, safety really begins in the body, and it begins from birth. And so our root chakra, which is our first chakra, down at the base of our legs and our hips, down through our legs and our feet, this energy center within our body is developed from birth to about 12 to 18 months of age. So when you think about that, logically, you're like, I don't remember what happened to me from birth to 18 months, right? And so our mind may not remember, but our body remembers that felt experience, and our body begins to develop patterns based off of that experience. And so this is where that curiosity comes in. When root chakra, safety in that space, every session, we're always revisiting them. How is that feeling? What is the baseline for that safety? Because our bodies are the vessel through which we move in this world, from the physical sense to our energetic and our spiritual sense. And so this is how we receive information. This is how we put out information. So it's in our best interest to develop a very intimate relationship with it and understand the language that it's speaking to us.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. And how is your indigenous roots um, influenced your experience of aliveness?
It's really heightened my level of aliveness, I will say. And really the last um gosh, probably 5 years, but more in depth, the last 2 to 3, I've really been on this exploration of how did my ancestors live? And innately, what are the ways in which they moved around in this world that I know is a part of my makeup and my body's wisdom? Because when we come into this world, our blueprint and our pattern comes through our epigenetics,
Mm.
that nucleus of our DNA. And when we think about DNA and we think about how it spirals, there is this circular motion and this understanding of we're constantly in motion. There's really not a beginning or an end. And so we can get caught up a lot of times in like this quest of like, okay, I did the thing, now what? And what's next? And we just don't allow ourselves to like really embrace like, wow, I've come a long way, you know? And so through my indigenous roots, I've really adopted ritual and ceremony
Mhm.
to help me slow down. And in crafting and giving reverence and space and time to, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do my releasing with the full moon, and I'm going to build into my intention with the new moon. It slows me down because it shows me those cycles and those patterns in nature, and it helps my patience a little bit because we get anxious and we want to see the thing we've been working towards, right? And it's all, we have to trust that it's all happening for us, whether we evidentially see it in the ego mind or not.
Mm.
And so my indigenous practices have really helped me cultivate my self trust in, remembering to trust and look at what nature does, and knowing that we have seasons and they last for 3 to 4 months, right? And, just all these different ways. And so the ritual and ceremony aspects have really just helped me slow down.
Hmm. Yeah, so powerful. The rituals and the ceremonies, it's not something that we typically make time for in
Right.
modern day existence.
Hmm.
And it's certainly something that I started tapping into while my father was dying, actually. And it was a way for me to connect to the natural cycle
Yes.
of death and the transition process that was happening. It's something that I noticed I did rather naturally. Like I think I was looking for something to support me in that experience. And
Mm-hmm.
naturally, I started to move into the direction of creating rituals and ceremony around the transition and
Mm-hmm.
connecting to nature and connecting, and so, this idea of interconnection, and because I think ritual and ceremony connect us to the interconnectivity of all of us.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yes.
it's the essence of it, because that was
Mm-hmm.
my experience,
Mm-hmm.
and there's such a power and an anchoring,
Yes.
and we go back to source
Mm-hmm.
and we anchor ourselves back in the interconnectedness. And I just wonder if you can speak to that, because that to me has such an enormous healing power and
Absolutely.
and grounding power. And when I do that, it's a natural way for me to connect back to
Yes.
trusting my life force, to trusting in the universe. So what is that? Like, why do you think that interconnection holds such power and such a grounding quality to it?
I think it's that what has happened for us in our Western society and the way that we've grown up is that we've been taught to be more individualistic. Like
Mm,
we're kind of in a me culture, right? And when we think about ancient cultures and the way people lived, it was very communal.
mm,
And we're shifting back to that. I am seeing there is this like reconnection, right? Where it's like you said, this came so naturally for me. It comes so naturally for all of us because we are all human. And even if you think of the animal kingdom, they have a very similar way in the way in which it works. And we are a part of that too. And so I really love this work because as we connect back into nature, we connect to ourselves, which then allows us to connect to other people and then eventually the greater web of life. And that's how we create the change in which we see in the world. Our logical mind wants to tell us what's happening overseas, we can't do anything about because we're just one person, but we can because the change begins with us. And that ripple from the changes we do with us ripples out to the person next to us and the person next. And it creates the wave, the bigger waves of change. And so I love what you said because for me too, I found this somatic work actually found me in college through my dance movement or my dance education. I first studied somatic only in terms of somatic movement, more as a somatic movement therapy. And when I began to study, my dad got diagnosed with a very aggressive form of brain cancer when I was 19, and he was gone within the year. And I was like, that rocked my world. And what I didn't realize at the time is these practices really opened up my eyes to life is short.
mm,
Like my dad was only 51. I was 19. I was like, oh, half my life could almost be over in a few years. He had lived his whole life. He had just retired and had all these plans. And then they were gone. And so that really shifted my perspective on the preciousness of our life and, to live every day from like our best self and do the things we want to do when we have those opportunities or to create those opportunities because we are the creators of our own life. And so, through this connection, like you said, connecting back to source, you realize you have a lot more resources that you can tap into without even having to spend money, right? You just have to spend that energy exchange is the time that you invest in yourself. And so treating yourself as the most important thing is what then begins to elevate and reconnect you to that greater. And I mean, your whole life will change. It'll feel magical.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. What are some rituals and ceremonies that people can do? If that's something that people are like, oh, cool, yeah, that sounds like a nice way in.
Mhm.
What are some simple things that people can try to create more ritual and ceremony in their everyday lives?
Yeah, so I like one of my favorite things to do is when you're gonna allow yourself to just sit and to be like, say, maybe you're somebody who journals, or maybe you're somebody who likes to read a book, in just that small practice, those things that you're already kind of doing for yourself, whether you realize it or not, lighting a candle. I invite you to think about how can I invite one of the elements into this experience, whether it be earth, whether it be fire, whether it be water, air, or the ether. That's how you begin to connect. And all of those things are available to you around you. You just can pick one thing. And that is what really began to change for me when I began to set an intention with the elements of our world.
Mm.
And water was the first one that I integrated, is having a connection with water, that anytime I sat to just think about my gratitudes and my intentions and my prayers for the day, I had a glass of water with me. And I would speak those things out into the water, because water, and there's more science now to prove this, but water has a very intelligence about it. And our water can help hold and help us anchor that intention. And guess what? Water is what our body is mostly made of. And how do we create the change and the shift in our body? Through our nervous system and our neuroplasticity in our brain, which is what? Water. So if you intentionally begin to work with water in this way, when you're drinking the water, just consciously bringing those prayers, those intentions back into the body. And then I always save a little bit. And then I go and I give it back to nature and I say, thank you unconditionally for your love and for your support. And I really try to do that with every glass of water I have. And anytime I'm like even cleaning up around my house and I find random water, I'll put it all in a bowl. And then that, instead of dumping it down the sink, I go take it outside.
Wow. How generous of you. That's really beautiful. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
that. I love that. Um, so I think we're gonna have to start wrapping up. This has gone so fast. I feel like I could chat with you forever. So as we wrap up,
Mhm.
you've offered so many beautiful insights, and really practical things that people can do. What would you like to say? Or what's one thing you'd like people to know about the experience of aliveness?
The one thing that I want people to know about the experience of aliveness is that it is available to you at all times. And it is up to you and your body to find it. Nobody else has the answer. It's your body that has the answer. And so I just want to invite you, when you want to experience that aliveness, find a moment of stillness, take a nice deep breath, and ask yourself, what is my aliveness? And then listen.
Hmm, beautiful. Thank you very much, Alex. This has been very enlightening, and I have really, really appreciated chatting with you. And I cannot wait to share all your goodness out into the world so that everybody can learn and to realize that it's not as hard as we think it might be.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. It's always available to us.
Mhm. Beautiful. Mwah. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. This was such a joy. I really appreciated it.